This episode is brought to you by Stirling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Stirling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at stirlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Hey there. Thanks for checking in to today's edition of This Day in Sports History. I'm your host for this 10 to 15-minute thrill ride through the world of sports. This Day in Sports History is just one of myriad podcasts available through the Sports History Network. You can find more stuff at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's August 14th, and the Paris Olympics have ended. The U.S. men's and women's basketball teams both won gold medals, and so let's go back to what happened on this day in 1936, when the first ever gold medal Olympic basketball game was played. It was the U.S. versus Canada playing for the title of World's Best on this day. The American team had been formed by the merger of two amateur teams. One group was from an oil refinery club team from Kansas. The other half were from the Universal Pictures team, as in the movie-making Universal Pictures. Back in the 30s, Universal used its team to market its movies, traveling up and down the West Coast. The team had some former collegiate stars from UCLA, and when they came to town, they would advertise a basketball exhibition game while carrying banners featuring upcoming cowboy movies or monster picks. The thinking was that if somebody could afford a ticket to a basketball game, they could probably afford a ticket to the movies. And it worked. So now that you know who was playing, how about where they were playing? Now, we all know that basketball was created as an indoor sport, created by Dr. James Naismith, as a way to keep his physical education classes entertained during the cold winter months. Well, the organizers wanted to try something different for the inaugural appearance of basketball at the Olympics. They decided to play the games outside. There were a few different surfaces used throughout the tournament, like grass and dirt, and that figured in on what happened in the gold medal game. The gold medal game was played on a dirt court in a drenching rain, and as you can figure, that made the court more of a mud pit than anything else. It was impossible to dribble the basketball. It's not like this game was going to be in the triple digits if it had been warm and dry, but the weather was certainly the main reason that the final score turned out to be USA 19, Canada 8. Joe Fortenberry was the high scorer for the U.S. with 8 points. Naismith was actually on hand to proudly award the gold medals to the U.S. team. When the next Olympics rolled around in 1948, Olympic organizers thought better of their experiment and moved the basketball games indoors. Also on this day in 1936, if you have ever read the book or seen the movie The Boys in the Boat, then you will be familiar with what happened on this day at the Olympic Games. It was the final of the men's 8 rowing competition, which featured 8 rowers and a coxswain. The team representing the United States consisted of the collegiate rowing champs from the University of Washington. The team made up of working-class college kids who came from logging families and dairy farms and commercial fishing families, guys who were affected quite severely by the Great Depression, beating West Coast elite teams from Cal and Stanford, and then outrowing the crew teams from the Ivy League East to win the 1936 Intercollegiate Rowing Regatta. They were kids going up against the world's best rowing teams in the Olympics. The boys had won their way to the finals on this day by winning their semifinal race on the 12th, but they came close to not even racing in that semifinal race. One of the 8 rowers, Don Hume, came down with a respiratory illness before the Olympics, and coach Al Ulbrichtson replaced him, knowing that would probably throw off the rhythm of the boat. The boys demanded that Hume be placed back in the boat, or they would not row. Ulbrichtson acquiesced. When they lined up for the 2,000-meter final, the Washington boys knew it was going to be a tough race with the Germans, the Brits, and the Italians. With Adolf Hitler looking on, the gun fired and the boats were off. The Washington boys were known to be slow starters, and that was exacerbated when they could not hear the start of the race because of the screaming crowd at the start line. At the 500-meter mark, they were trailing every other boat, and all appeared lost. Hume was out of it, and he wasn't responding to coxswain Bobby Mock's orders to pick up the stroke rate. But then, as if a light switch was flipped, Hume became alert and locked in, and the American boat surged. By the halfway point, they were making up ground, but still had a lot to do. With 50 meters to go, they had finally moved in front of Italy and taken the lead. They held on to win by a half second over Italy and finished just 1 tick of the clock in front of Germany. At the award ceremony afterward, Hitler, in true weasel fashion, refused to shake the hands of the American winners. The Washington crew's win was one of the signature moments of the 1936 Olympics that have been mostly forgotten until Daniel James Brown's book, The Boys in the Boat, was published in 2013. On this day in 1977, Lanny Wadkins won his first and only major tournament. It was the PGA Championship being played at Pebble Beach, and there were a few surprises in this tournament. The first was that Lanny Wadkins was even in the mix. The 27-year-old Wake Forest graduate had been on the tour for a while, but he hadn't won a tour event since 1973. But he started off his final round in nice fashion, putting 2 eagles on his scorecard in his opening 9 holes. When Watkins dropped his wedge shot on 18 to 1.5 feet from the hole, and then he rolled in his birdie, he was sitting at 6 under and was the leader in the clubhouse. But Gene Littler was in control of the tournament. He'd led since day 1, and he started this day 4 shots clear of the field and 6 shots in front of Watkins. But somebody loosened the lug nuts on Littler's round because his wheels fell off on his back 9. Littler started his final 9 holes with a 5-shot lead, and then he proceeded to bogey 5 of his next 6 holes. He put the wheels back on in time to make pars on the final 3 holes to also finish at 6 under par, setting up a playoff between him and Watkins. Now, this was the first time that a sudden death playoff was used to decide the champion of the PGA. In fact, this was the first time a sudden death playoff had ever been used in a major golf tournament. Previously, it had been a Monday 18-hole playoff. But nobody told Watkins that he still had golf to play on this day. He was kicking back in the clubhouse halfway through a Budweiser when Littler rolled in his par on 18, with Watkins thinking that he was set to hang out on the Pacific Coast for another night and then play an 18-hole playoff on Monday. But that quickly changed when he learned that he needed to get to the first tee for the sudden death playoff. Shaking off a few jitters and a few hops, Watkins was able to keep the tournament going with a gutsy 12-foot par putt at the first. Both birdied the second, and they headed to the third. Apparently, the tournament organizers also did not expect a sudden death playoff because all of the gallery ropes had been removed from the first few holes. The gallery swarmed around the golfers as they lined up their shots in the fairway. Both golfers' approach to the third hole went a little astray, and both wound up in the rough. Littler hit his a bit fat, leaving himself a 20-foot par putt. Watkins lifted his out of the tall stuff cleanly and landed inside 5 feet. When Littler missed his putt, Wadkins calmly rolled in his par for the win at the PGA Championship. And as a little aside, you've heard the ad at the start of this podcast for several weeks now. Well, I did use Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. Golf's biggest stars recall their finest moments as a resource for this story. I've got a copy, and I can tell you that this is a great book for any golf fan. If you or someone you know fits that category, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget would make a great gift. And on this day in 1959, the U.S. got a new football league. When Texas millionaire Lamar Hunt stepped to the microphone for a press conference on this day, he was excited to announce the formation of the American Football League. The AFL would start play in 1960 with teams in Dallas, Houston, Minneapolis-St. Paul, Denver, New York, and Los Angeles. Of course, you know the story by now that the AFL and NFL would eventually merge a decade later and put both leagues under the same umbrella. And time now for today's non-sports fun fact. Did you know that Caesar salad was invented in Mexico? That's all for today. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast that you found. While there may not be something for everybody every day, there is something for some people on most days. Or, something like that. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. Go be awesome, and I'll talk to you tomorrow around this same time. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.